Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. Joe Samaniego here, along with Ben Schneider and Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. We have a lot of racing to discuss today. On the show, we encourage everyone watching, be sure to hit the thumbs up, like our videos, subscribe to us right here on the Grid there, and a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers. Call the show, Mark, Robin, and David, the newest one, for investing in the Grid Network each month. We're coming up to a busy summer season where we're going to be hopefully at the track more. You can help us get there, especially if we hit $500 a month or more each month. And of course, you could do Buy Me a Coffee, where you could buy coffee for a particular on-air personality, especially for the folks like Ben, who does Grid Encore, and of course, Kobe later on. You and Joshua, a busy month of May, busy week with INDYCAR. And that's where we're going to start off with INDYCAR at Indianapolis.
Yeah, Joe, it's getting very busy in this motorsport season. We get into the summer stretch here. It's also getting really hot outside. But it was hot on the track at the IMS Road Course with Alex Palou becoming the latest driver to win the GMR Grand Prix, 16.8 seconds ahead of Pato O'Ward, and Palou controlled the race after leading the first lap. Now Palou is the new NTT IndyCar Series points leader, and he's finished second and ninth in the last two Indy 500s. Palou's worst finish this season is eighth in the season open in Firestone Grand Prix in St. Pete. Two fifth-place finishes, third, and now a win. Joe, is Palou carrying the most momentum entering the Indy 500 as one of the favorites?
I do have to say I feel he is one of the favorites for this year's Indianapolis 500, and this win is coming off what's been a good start for him in the season. Got the points lead, looking very good with that team. I think this is a big confidence boost because last year it just seemed he was missing all year long, not a factor in each and every race like it was the prior year. The consistency wasn't exactly there on the level as his championship season. He has that going this year. He has a fast car week in and week out. He controlled the race pretty much from that first lap with that aggressive move around Christian Lundgaard. Didn't look back, and even when he had some challenges, he just seemed to take care of it easily. The strategy worked out, and now he's come to the Indy 500 where he has been running up front each time since joining Chip Ganassi. I think Alex Palou is getting the momentum at the right time, and he is somebody to watch in the month of May and the 500.
Yeah, I was very surprised hearing on the broadcast as Palou was coming to take a checkered flag. That's only his fifth career win. I would have expected him to have, maybe double that by now. It seems like he's been a solid contender in this series for a good solid few years already. But I guess I forgot he only won last year. I think the season finale was his only win of a year, if I recall correctly. So like you were saying, Joe, it was a bit of a down year off of winning a championship with Ganassi the previous year, where he won 3 races on his way to doing that. So, I think momentum is everything in the sport, or it can be if you know how to take that and use it to your advantage. So I think, Palou getting the win on the road course and having a chance to turn that around and maybe go out and win the Indianapolis 500. It's been done a couple times before by different drivers. I believe Simon Pagenaud did it in 2019, perhaps most recently, if I recall correctly. So I think that, Palou is certainly shaping up to be a very solid Indy 500 contender. And let's not forget, he was in the battle with Elio Castroneves to win it just a couple of years ago when Elio won his fourth. So I think Palou, especially with the Ganassi team, it's been very, very strong over the last several years. They won it last year with Marcus Ericsson. I think they could certainly win it this year with Alex Palou.
Yeah, for sure. I think Alex Palou is in a much better situation now compared to last year, thinking about the down year after winning a championship. And I think the biggest thing for Alex Palou, he doesn't have that contract drama hanging over his head right now. He got that taken care of. And now him and that number 10 team can just continue to push forward and do what he's been doing, been very, very consistent, and now has that win. I think Palou is certainly in a great spot now to be one of the main contenders as we get deeper into the month of May. Certainly has a lot of momentum after winning that GMR Grand Prix. And Bang brought up a good point. Ganassi won Marcus Ericsson last year. Scott Dixon also might have won the race if it wasn't for that pit road speeding penalty that they ended up dooming him. We all know Ganassi is going to bring fast Hondas to the oval when practice kicks off on Tuesday. So it would not surprise me to see Alex Palou to be in the hunt once again. And for the third time this year, Pato O'Ward finished second, but he was more positive post-race. He was happy that Aaron McLaren got a second, third, and fifth place finish. Rossi took third and Rosenquist in fifth. O'Ward says McLaren is ready for Tuesday when practice kicks off in the Speedway for the Indy 500. Ben, which Chevrolet team appears to be more ready for the Indy 500, Aaron McLaren or Team Penske?
I just said it. Momentum's everything in the sport, right? McLaren. I saw some people making some jokes that McLaren finished first, second, third, and fifth because I guess Alex Palou is still sort of related with that team with the contract situation that he's got right now with Ganassi as well. But a great day for McLaren, certainly on the IndyCar side of things. I think that they could turn that around and build some momentum too. And again, we'll know in just a few days' time after we see the cars out on track for the initial tests and everything. But we were saying on the show, I feel like just last week or a couple of weeks ago, ever since Roger Penske actually bought IMS and the series, it's kind of been a struggle for them at the Indianapolis 500. So maybe this is the year they can turn it around. But as of right now, I think McLaren look very strong, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with later this month as we get into the 500.
I do agree. When it gets into the 500, Arrow McLaren, they're looking good. We know Pato O'Ward has been fast at the Indianapolis 500. I feel Felix Rosenqvist, if he could put together a good run, he'll be towards the front. And Alexander Rossi, he feels like he has a point to prove to go out there, get a good, strong result. I would not see him being a surprise contender for the win. I think he will be one of the top 10 contenders for the win. And I think overall, Alexander Rossi, he just seems, especially this race weekend, just putting together good, solid runs, good efforts to have a strong Indy 500. If he has a strong Indy 500, I think that could really give him a lot of momentum for the second half of the season to be a contender week in and week out and propel him for a championship run.
Yeah, I certainly have to think that the Arrow McLaren certainly has the most momentum right now as we get ready for practice in just a couple of days' time. But thinking back to the open test they did, Team Penske was very strong. I remember I brought up this point the last time out. It seemed like all three of those Chevys were dialed in, and they finally found a great setup to start off the month of May. And it'll certainly be interesting to see if Team Penske is able to keep that speed up as we have multiple days of practice coming later this week. I believe we have a comment in the chat room. Yeah, Dana Live says McLaren drivers did sweep the GP. Yeah, and Alex Palou is a reserve driver for the McLaren Formula One team, so I guess you can say that. And the only other Chevrolet driver to finish in the top 10 that didn't come from the McLaren stable was Joseph Newgarden in seventh. He finished ahead of Marcus Ericsson, the points leader in the weekend. And while Ericsson has finished in the top 10 every race this season, he's lost the points lead and fell to third behind Palou and O'Ward. Ericsson is 19 points away from the lead. Should he start taking more risks each race to fight for the win more, over playing it safe and focus on consistency?
I feel like while consistency is very important in the IndyCar series, we saw Will Power utilize consistency to win one race and a championship. At the pace Alex Palou is going, he's not going to get that championship. And what Pato O'Ward's doing, we know Pato O'Ward doesn't want to be known for having so many second place finishes. He wants those wins. I think Marcus Ericsson does have to step it up. A quiet race weekend, that's great, always building those points. But if you want to be a championship contender, especially this year, it seems like you're going to really have to try to step it up some. You could still bank on the idea that Indy 500, the two drivers ahead in the points could have a bad race, more bad races later on. It was a couple seasons ago with Colton Herta, in the season opening race said everyone's going to have a bad weekend. Right now, Palou, O'Ward, they seem really strong where you can't just bank on them having a bad weekend, getting the point championship. I do think Marcus Ericsson needs to step it up a little bit more to prove he's worthy of championship picture.
Joe, I'm going to respectfully disagree, and I'm going to disagree based on the standings from last season. If you remember what happened with the two Penske drivers that finished 1-2 in the points, one of them won 5 races, the other only won 1 race. Which driver won the championship? I think that tells you everything you need to know about how key consistency is in the NTT IndyCar series. So while a win is great, and I'm sure Marcus would love to go out and win as many races as he can, being only 19 points back, roughly a third of the way into the season with 2/3 of the races to go. You see 5 of 17 there. He's only 19 points back. I don't think this is quite the time to take those unnecessary risks just yet here. Now, if he's only 19 points back, or if he is 19 points back heading into the final race, then absolutely you go for broke there and try to do everything you can to get the win. But at this point of the season, I think you can bank on that consistency a little bit. You've got to get a win at some point here or there, I would think, if you're going to be a true championship contender. But Will Power just proved it last year, winning only 1 race, Joseph Newgarden's 5. I was getting nervous for a second. I thought IndyCar might say we need a playoff system like NASCAR did after Matt Kenseth won in 2003. But I guess they didn't decide to go down that road just yet. We'll see if we get another one-win champion this year. But for Marcus Ericsson at this point in the season, I don't think that he needs to go all in on risks or win or bust just yet. I think that he's in a very good position. We'll see what happens after the 500. Then we get into the heart of the season. We'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure, Ben. And yesterday on Grid Live pre-race, y'all wondered if Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan Racing could win. Joe said one car finish on the podium will be a win for the team. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Christian Lundgaard lost the final podium position. Alexander Rossi, Lundgaard ended up finishing fourth, but he called that fourth place finish a win for the team. Graham Rahal had a flat tire in the first lap, but managed to get a top 10 using strategy. His second top 10 finish of the year. Jack Harvey ended up 20th place after a promising start. The third time he's been 20th or worse this year. Ben, do you believe Christian Lundgaard is at the level to be a serious contender each week? And has he solidified his role as the RLL team leader?
Well, real quick, I just want to circle back. I forgot Marcus Ericsson won the season opening race at St. Pete. So he already does have that win under his belt, but I'm sure he would like to get at least one or two more as the season goes on. But we'll leave that be for now. Let's talk about Christian Lundgaard. I think, yes, he's certainly getting there. Now, in terms of being the leader at Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, I think the de facto leader is going to be Graham Rahal by default here until he retires or at least changes teams or whatever his future situation holds. I know he's certainly closer to the end of his career than the beginning at this point, but Christian Lundgaard, has proven that he's on his best day, certainly capable of getting up there and mixing it up and potentially being a threat for the win, especially on the IMS road course, I suppose, thinking back to one of his runs there last year. So I think he's certainly taking that step in that direction. But, in terms of winning a championship or anything like that, I think there's still some steps to go before we put him in that category.
They're making a step in the right direction overall. Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. Graham Rahal, I think I have to agree with you, Ben, will always be seen as sort of the team leader. But Christian Lundgaard is really putting together some good, strong performances, trying to be up there towards the front. He said it felt like a win. I guess you could say that because considering where that team was, how he did battle really hard against some of the other drivers to try to stay in that podium position. It didn't work out. He said they had faster cars, but he still said it felt like a win. My book is like, hey, you feel like that's a big step forward. That is great for you. That's great for the team. Build that up, and especially when the next run is the Indianapolis 500, the biggest race. I don't know. I guess I would just wonder, do we think we could see Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan be competitive for the Indy 500?
Well, in regards to them being competitive for the Indy 500, I definitely say we stand a greater chance to see them racing a lot better than they qualify. Typically, when it comes to qualifying for the Indy 500, we see the RLL cars towards the back of the running order. And in regards to Christian Lundgaard, I think it's been hit or miss with this Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan team. Like one week they'll show up, the cars look really fast, and then the other week, they'll be completely lost. And so far this season, they've mostly looked lost at places, completely missing the setup. And Christian Lundgaard, he had quite a struggle last year during the month of May. It doesn't seem like the oval racing has really clicked with him compared to the road and street courses that he's been used to throughout his career. And it'll certainly be interesting to see how Christian is going to do moving forward as we get deeper into the season. And now the focus is going to be shifting to the first practice session on Tuesday for the Indy 500. And here's a reminder that we're having special coverage of Indy 500 practice all week long, Tuesday through Friday, with a special edition of Grit Tonight. Don't miss our Indy 500 pre-race show Sunday morning on May 28th after the Monaco Grand Prix right here on Grit Network's YouTube channel. And I believe we have a question in the chat room.
We do. It's from Day in the Life. How long will Graham Rahal race if, and then he says, doesn't win? I'm guessing referring to, what's mentioned earlier.
Winning 500, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Rahal's 34 years old, so I think in theory he could race another 10 years if he wanted to. But, I don't know if he wants to follow in his father's footsteps on the ownership side of things, or maybe take a step back like Marco Andretti did and become an Indy 500 only driver. I don't know. I think Grant, like I said, he's certainly closer to the end than the beginning, but I think it's kind of up in the air. He could only have a few years left. He could have a whole decade left, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the age of what we're seeing drivers continue to race. I mean, Elio Castroneves is approaching his late 40s here, and he's still at it every weekend with Meyer Shank. So I think the door is certainly open. He certainly has a ride with his family team if he wants it. I think if he wins the Indianapolis 500, maybe that would actually inspire him to maybe say, I've accomplished what I set out to do in my career, and now that I've achieved this, maybe I can feel more comfortable taking that step back and not wonder what if I had carried on an extra few years and taken another opportunity to win this race. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, ball is definitely in Graham Rahall's court. Since his father's one of the co-owners of the team, Graham can pretty much decide on his own when he wants to call it quits. He could race for another 5, 6, 7, 10 more years if he wanted to. He could race for a few more years. It's really going to be ultimately up to him and what he wants to do. And I think Graham Rahal certainly has some good moments in his career. Probably not as good moments as he would really like, but definitely the Indy 500. If he's able to win that at some point, whether it's later this month or in years ahead, that would definitely be the cherry on top of his IndyCar racing career. And certainly, Ben, I have a feeling in some cases with certain drivers, if they check that one off their list, they were like, "Yep, I've already got the big one. There's no need to continue, so I'm just going to focus more on the ownership side of things." So, Joe, unless you had anything to add to this discussion, I was going to throw it over to Ben for MotoGP's French Grand Prix, the 1000 MotoGP Grand Prix event.
I'm kicking myself because I feel like there was a driver in the 30s or 40s that retired in victory lane of the Indianapolis 500. I can't remember the name of who that was, but I feel like I remember hearing something about that in Indy 500 history. Maybe we can look that up after the show here. But let's move on for now and go on to MotoGP here from the first Grand Prix at the Isle of Man in 1949 to the 1000th Grand Prix today in Le Mans, France. MotoGP has evolved over the past 74 years. Over 278,000 fans broke the attendance record to see the historic MotoGP Grand Prix. This record book will show another Ducati podium sweep, but Joe, this race certainly was not a snooze fest. Marco Beschecchi earned his first dry weather race win after serving a penalty for pushing Marc Marquez wide. They took the lead from Jack Miller and never looked back with 16 laps remaining. Joe Beschecchi looked unbeatable after he took the lead. Would it be a different story if some race favorites hadn't had some bad luck?
I would say yes, because early on, he was 6th place in the race, and we still have Pecco Bagnaia up towards the front. He didn't have the great race yesterday, but I think he was going to have a better race today because it just seems like the Grand Prix is where he really comes in. When it came to Maverick Vinales, very fast bike, easily could have been in the podium, got turned around Pecco Bagnaia. Unfortunately, when Pecco tried to claim the spot again, exiting the corner, the two collided. So you had two favorites out. Luca Marini, Beschecchi's teammate. Strong run, but then had that scary incident where he lost control, exiting turn 4, and then we saw Alex Marquez collide with him and the two riders on the ground. And Alex Marquez, very heads up to just get up, face the oncoming traffic of motorcycles, and try to just avoid them as they were coming through. Very scary moment. Beschecchi could have easily, I think, been behind those if that occurred. We got to remember, too, Ducati, the Premac team, Jorge Martin, horrible first lap, fell towards the back, rode his way to the front. Zarco, another poor start, came all the way to the front. If those two didn't have bad starts, they went further up front, just like how Jorge Martin dominated the race yesterday. Been a very different story. Overall, I think still job well done. He did it in dry weather. He still had to beat Jack Miller, hold off some good competition, and Marc Marquez. I say he well deserved this win, but it could have easily been a different story.
Well, Joe, you mentioned it. The big drama in the race was Maverick Vinales and Pecco Bagnaia crashing out, and then an upset Vinales hits and shoves Bagnaia after the crash. The cameras turned away from this conflict because of the scary Alex Marquez and Luca Marini crash, but later we did see Bagnaia and Vinales sharing a scooter ride back to the paddock. So, Joe, do you agree that it was hard racing, or was there a rider in particular at fault in the Vinales and Bagnaia collision?
Originally, when I saw the crash occur and the first angles of the replay, it looked like it was hard racing. Vinales had made the pass. Of course, when you exit the corner, you're going to be a little wider up, but he was going to claim that spot, enter the next corner. But so is Pecco Bagnaia. What happens? The two of them collide. Hard racing. However, seeing the replay from Pecco's bike, clearly you could see Maverick Vinales was ahead of you exiting the corner. You know he's most likely going to take that preferred line. So you either race hard and try to claim that spot, hoping Vinales will realize you're there, but he's ahead of you, so he can't see you. Or do you sort of concede, leave some room for him, and potentially lose the position? I think Pecco Bagnaia, if he could take that move back, he would have just conceded to position, wait to see if Vinales hopefully had the tires drop off, lose some ground, lose some speed, and then reclaim that position. Because at the end, Pecco Bagnaia, again, no points scored in the Grand Prix race. So overall, small points lead. He cannot be affording these mistakes. He has to think big picture. I feel he didn't do that. So while I still think it was hard racing, at the end, Pecco Bagnaia is probably kicking himself thinking, if I could have taken that back, I could have still gotten a podium.
Well, let's talk about Marc Marquez for a second. On his return race, he crashed 2 laps away from a podium. The last time he finished a full Grand Prix race was in October of 2022. His teammate Juan Mir crashed out and crashed 3 times total this weekend. So, Joe, can Red Bull Honda and Marc Marquez look at this weekend as a step forward or a step back?
They're saying it's a step forward, and I believe they're thinking it is a step forward. However, you got to know Honda, they want to see points. They don't want to see so little points because both riders are out. The Constructors' Championship, I think, is out of the picture for them already. The big thing they got to look at is just trying to earn points. I know Marc Marquez is a racer. He did not want to give up second place. Potentially, if he had given up second place to Jorge Martin, Zarco could have easily caught him, but that's 4th place still. Is it a podium? No. Is it the win? Of course not. Will he be exactly happy? Not really. But the team will say, hey, we got a result that we're happy about. We got some valuable points. Let's start rebuilding this season since it's been a disaster of a start. I mean, really only Enea Bastianini, I feel, has had a worse start this year in MotoGP. So this was a missed opportunity for them. I think it won't be long until we start hearing rumblings because we know Joshua has been talking about the rumors going on behind the scenes with Repsol Honda, Marc Marquez. So Marc Marquez, next few rounds, try to get those points. I think that'll be one of the priorities Repsol Honda will want. It's just a matter of making sure your rider, Marc Marquez, gets the job done.
And let's take a look at the point standings after today's race. 4 riders are within striking distance of the points lead for the next race weekend. Bagnaia leads by 1 point. Beschecki has 3 podium finishes and 1 DNF in the Grand Prix races this year. Brad Binder is 13 points behind and has been strong in the sprint races. Jorge Martin is 14 behind Pecco Bagnaia. Compared to last year, Fabio Quartararo had a big lead after 5 races, and many had written Bagnaia off. Now it seems it's much closer this year at this point of the season, with the first year of sprints being at every race weekend. So, Joe, are you surprised by how the sprint races have impacted the championship standings?
I am surprised, considering we have so many sprint races. I was thinking we're going to see a lot more riders go out there, sweep the weekend, especially Pecco Bagnaia. He has to be the favorite entering the season. That hasn't been the case. The strategy we're seeing of Brad Binder just going all out in the sprint races, that's what's really keeping him in this championship battle, because in the Grand Prix, he has not had that good of a finishes. But if he was to have a good finish, a podium finish, in fact, today, he could have easily been the points leader. Granted, if Marco Beschecki didn't finish ahead of him, and we know Pecco Bagnaia crashed out. So yes, the sprint races, especially the big points table where the top 8 are scoring points, and still a lot of points. We're not talking about single digit small points. We're not talking about fewer races like F1. It's each and every race. It's going to be really interesting to see if the strategy continues to evolve, where riders are going to put more emphasis on the sprint races and then just try to get enough points, where it seems like what Joshua said yesterday, Pecco Bagnaia, damage control in the sprint, go out in the full Grand Prix races. But as we're seeing, that's not working out that great either this year.
Well, we'll certainly keep our eye on the standings and how the sprint races are impacting that as the season goes on. Still a lot of racing left in MotoGP and all the series we cover here at Grid Network. Now, Joe, I'll turn it over to you for an update on WRC.
WRC update. We first got in a video from Joshua Holbrook about excuse me, Burch about MotoGP.
Hello, everybody. And first, let me apologise for not being on the show tonight, but it is very late here in the UK. But I've recorded this. I've just finished the NASCAR race as well on USRN, so I apologise for the headphone here. Wearing a headset like this for 4 hours does make it quite hard as well to keep some sort of life in your hair. Okay, so we've already heard from the guys as well, or are going to hear from the guys, I don't know when they're going to put this on the programme, about the great races we've had here this weekend. Just want to talk briefly as well my thoughts on MotoGP. First of all, let's start with the big one as well. Great race for Marco Bezzecchi. Now takes the lead as well. Just 1 point behind Bagnaia in the championship. Is exciting stuff. Bagnaia again having another crash moment as well in the championship. That's the second time this year he's gone down, regardless of how many sprint races and double race wins he can actually get. It's not good that he keeps on making these mistakes and these errors. So he's going to have to work on that as well. He's got a month off now before his home race and Ducati's home race at Mugello. He will come back stronger, and I reckon they will win there as well. But at least it's a Ducati 1, 2, 3 on the podium as well. Prima Pramac, as I said yesterday with Joe. Great to see them as well, having a strong weekend. Martin taking the sprint race win as well. And then we come in as well with Johan Zarco getting in third position as well. Zarco on home soil getting a podium position is absolutely fantastic job for him. I thought it was a nice touch after the checker flag that Marco Bezzecchi gave the MotoGP 1000 flag as well for a race winner to Johan Zarco to celebrate as well. That was truly chef's kiss. Augusto Fernandez in fourth was actually his best ever result for Gas as well. Some really strong finishes for him there. He beats out Aleix Espargaro on the last few laps to finish in fifth. Brad Binder in sixth after starting 10th. Couldn't quite do what he did yesterday in the sprint race, finishing in second, so back down to sixth. Quadraro fought back from 13th to 7th. Good race for him. Di Giannantonio 8th. Nakagami 9th. Morbidelli in 10th position. Good job for them. Petrucci, I think, a star. A wild card racer in Freneo Bascini, still injured. He finished in 11th. Lorenzo Salvador 12th. Jonas Folger 13th. So Folger getting his first point since his horrific illness as well that put him out of racing in 2017. His first points back in MotoGP. Out of the race though, Marc Marquez throwing it down with 2 to go at the Kalex bike, also getting destroyed for the second time this weekend. They have not got that many parts to keep rebuilding it, so Mark is going to be a very chastised person in the next few days. Jack Miller also throwing it out. Now, I didn't do it this time. It was my pick a winner for both races, both sprint and main Grand Prix. He went down, not my fault. Then we get Rins, Johan Mir, Marini, Alex Marquez. Now, Marini and Alex Marquez's crash was really quite frightening because we had Marini sort of drop it, and then Marquez, who had nothing to do as well, complete innocent bystander, just runs into the side of him. Alex is left in the middle of the track with a bike there too, all flashing towards him as well, just got out of harm's way. But Freddie Spencer, who I think is an absolute useless guy, absolutely moronic steward. Everybody wants him out as well. There's been a load of controversy surrounding him. Freddie Spencer has decided to give Alex Marquez a 3-place grid penalty for the next race for irresponsible riding as well. What a load of rubbish. Never been so angry with stewards, and this is only going to get worse between the stewards and the riders as well. Alex Marquez, though, getting out, as I said. Then we had Francesco Bagnaia and Maverick Vinales. This is the crash. The reason I blamed Bagnaia just a few minutes ago was because it was his fault. Vinales did a beautiful move down at turn 11 at the Espreuse corner, and then coming back on the inside, it was Vinales' corner. He had the line. Bagnaia decided to hold it around the outside. Bagnaia made contact with Vinales. He also hit his head, so I'm glad he's okay. But then he gets up, Vinales is shouting at him, and then Bagnaia starts having a fight with him, going all Roche Chastain on it. Completely ridiculous there, but I'm very glad to say that they did make up. It was the heat of the moment. They rode back together in the paddock. They were perfectly okay, and even Bagnaia wanted Vinales in with the stewards as well to make sure everything was okay. But that was it for MotoGP as well. A quite fantastic race as well. And I'll now finish my part on MotoGP and let the guys get on to what I presume would be NASCAR, and I'll pop back up with another video then.
NASCAR in a little bit. We still got a couple of other racing series. One last comment about Valentino Rossi. Has to be happy, of course. Owner of that team, Marco Bezzecchi, his rider, getting the win. Great day for the doctor. Can't be in the 1000 Grand Prix racing, but could be there as an owner and got to win. That has to feel really good. Now, World Rally Championship, Kalle Rovanperä won Rally Portugal, his first win in the 2023 season. Danny Sora Escapacolapi rounded off the podium. So for Hyundai, second and third place, not too bad. Keeping the pressure on Toyota, especially when it comes to the constructors, but still Toyota has a sizable lead there because of Sebastian Ogier's wins this year. Autonic comes home fourth place, but the big thing now, he is second place in the championship. Sebastian Ogier, of course, did not race, lost some positions. That's only going to continue as he doesn't race the full season. But Autonic, he's the only driver that could still get within the points lead in a single race weekend. Everybody else, quite a ways back. But I feel overall, when it comes to Autonic and that Ford M Sport team, they really have to step it up because it seems like Kalle Rovanperä, especially when we don't have Sebastian Ogier, could run away with this. It's going to be really interesting to see. Next up, on one series, we haven't really seen so much of a runaway, IMSA.
That's right, Joe. The 2-hour and 40-minute IMSA sprint race at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca was hot and slick with high tire wear and multiple full-course cautions. After winning at Long Beach last time out, Porsche Penske Motorsports seemed to have the potential to sweep both races in California, but the start wasn't great as both Porsches locked up and lost a few positions. The pole-winning number 7 Porsche 963 had a miserable race, starting with Matt Campbell receiving a penalty for avoidable contact after knocking the number 94 Andretti Autosport Aston Martin of Jared Andretti off the track into the tires at pit entrance. Then Campbell's co-driver Felipe Nasser damaged the car after he made a mistake and hit a wall off track. In the end, it turned out to be a big day for Cadillac, with Chip Ganassi Racing's number 01 Cadillac V-Series R taking the win, a much-needed win for the 01 Ringer van der Zande and Sebastian Bourdais. After a lot of misfortune lately, they were dominant at Sebring until a mechanical failure put them out of contention. Bourdais crashed out at the very start of the race at Long Beach, and another crash for Bourdais in the first practice session this weekend that saw the car suffer damage. Kobe, were you surprised how chaotic this race was, and can this win be the first step in helping Ganassi put the bad luck behind them?
Yeah, Ben, I was very surprised how chaotic this race was. These races at Laguna Seca aren't typically so chaotic. I have no idea what the problem was this time around, but hey, I'm not complaining. The race at Laguna Seca was definitely quite a show, especially watching those GTP cars slicing and dicing through GTD traffic. And yeah, it was like a caution break cautions type of event. Yeah, during like the first hour, we had a few full course cautions, and it seemed like at one point we were going to be riding behind the safety car more than we were actually racing around the track. But as we got deeper into the race, it finally settled into a rhythm. Saw a lot of great action, and Ganassi came on top. I think that this is definitely a great first step for Chip Ganassi Racing and the entire 01 team to put all the bad luck behind them. And Ben, you mentioned all of the things that have gone wrong with this 01. You know, Sebring, it looked like that race was going to be theirs until it wasn't. They had an unfortunate mechanical issue, caused Bourdais to crash out at the very start of Long Beach, so they really didn't even get to race at Long Beach. And then coming off all that, crashing out in the first practice session, it seemed like the bad luck was never going to end. And want to throw in one more event, this same car, the 01, it was renumbered as the number 3 in the FI World Endurance Championship. I know we talked about it here on the air. Ringer van der Zande had a scary crash at Radion over in the 6-hour race at Spa. You know, and totally destroyed their Le Mans chassis. So this specific team has been through a lot this season, and to get this win, it certainly has to feel sweet. And maybe we can see them try to build something moving forward in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and also they can build some momentum heading into the 24 Hours of Le Mans as well next month.
And taking a look at the other class winners in LMP2, it was the number 11 TDS Racing team with Mikael Jensen and Stephen Thomas. In GTD Pro, number 79 WeatherTech Racing Mercedes with Jules Ganone and Danny Hungadea. And in GTD, the number 91 Kelly Moss Rally Porsche with Kay Van Berlo and Alan Metney. Now the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship will be out of action for a little while due to next month's 24 Hours of Le Mans, as Kobe mentioned. IMSA will return from a Le Mans break on June 25th with all 5 classes for the Salen's 6 Hours of the Glen. Now, Kobe, I'll hand it back over to you for more endurance racing talk with the Grid EPI update.
Today's IMSA race at Laguna Seca was scored in the Grid Endurance Performance Index. And here are the top 10 entering the weekend. We'll likely see some changes. Matt White's going to join us on Grid tonight on our regular night Wednesday for the updated EPI standings. And as I said, Wednesday, because Grid Tonight will be on the air Tuesday through Friday. All week long, we'll recap each day of IndyCar practice for the 107th run of the Indianapolis 500. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our coverage this week. It's a big week for Grid Network.
Big week for Grid Network. Big month of May for everyone, it seems. We have, of course, the Indianapolis 500, IndyCar, their big month of May. Ben, we're going to start talking some NASCAR, and we've been talking about the month of May. They're in the Carolinas. Started with South Carolina today for the Goodyear 400 at Darlington Raceway. Plenty of action in this race, and of course, this is Darlington, the Lady in Black. We all know we're going to see drivers get the Darlington stripe. Well, we didn't expect, I say, some big crashes, an 8-car pileup and then a 9-car pileup. Martin Truex Jr. led the most laps, 146 laps led, but he didn't finish the race. Ross Chastain led the second most laps. Fast car didn't finish the race either. In fact, it was Chastain's crash with Kyle Larson fighting for the lead on the restart that paved the way for William Byron to get his third win of the season and been 3 wins now. William Byron, it seemed like he was a little bit on a slump for a while, not finishing races, bad luck, not contending like he was earlier in the year. Is he back to his winning ways?
Well, I think, there was certainly that stretch right after his back-to-back wins at Las Vegas and Phoenix where it seemed like things weren't going his way, but he did just come off leading the most laps in the Stage 1 win at Dover and pole last weekend at Kansas as well, and top 5 finishes in both of those races. So it's not like Byron, I think, has been, nowhere and not contending for wins the last couple of weekends. I think this has been building over the last several races now and finally culminates in a victory in this race that he arguably should have won last year if he hadn't been moved out of the way by Joey Logano with just a few laps remaining. So I think Byron is certainly somebody you have to look at as a championship contender at this point with 3 wins already on the year. A little bit up and down, as you mentioned, Joe, but I think if the team can get the consistency figured out, they certainly have the speed and they certainly have the horsepower to go out and compete for a championship. So I would say not only is Byron back to his winning ways, I think he's been capable of being in his winning ways all year. It's just a matter of finishing the races and putting these strong runs together and getting the consistency up. That's going to really benefit him as he continues his championship fight.
The consistency, he needs to have that there for the championship. I agree with you with that. It's going to be really interesting to see how that all works out. Comment in the chat from Adam. Love the throwback weekend at Darlington. Needs to stay there. It's a lot of fun. I know we talked a little bit about it with Josh. Ben, throwback weekend, I know it's been a few years, and it looks weird still with the numbers up front compared to traditional.
Yeah, and it's getting so repetitive. I feel like we've seen the same number of schemes at this point. Maybe we put it to bed for a few years, or maybe we move it to North Wilkesboro or something. Which I know we're going to see some throwback schemes out there anyway. But I mean I feel bad for Kevin Harvick. The Harvick throwback that he had. I mean that was the worst Harvick throwback of the weekend. You look at all the Harvick throwbacks in the Xfinity Series this weekend; they were all great. And Kevin's was just I don't know what they were going with there. You can't match the color schemes; you can only match the design. And the numbers are moved forward. I'm just, I don't know. I think I'm, you're just getting a little burnout with the throwbacks here. But I will say this: Kyle Busch throwing it back to his first ever career win with RCR. I think that was a throwback of the year right there. I think they went all in. They got the scheme basically perfect from where it was when that scheme first raced. So hats off to RCR. I truly think if we have a throwback of the year award, they need to be in consideration for that because Kyle Busch, they really nailed that scheme there.
Be more impressive. They threw it back and used the same car from his first win too. That could have been possible as well.
Yeah, that would.
Kyle Busch, he didn't exactly have a good day with that throwback scheme. We'll see if he'll come back again because there was some big crashes. He was caught up in one of them. Unfortunately, if we're talking about crashes, it seems we're talking about Ross Chastain. There was so much discussion, Ben, this week about him being the next Intimidator or the next troublemaker. It seemed everybody was sharing their opinions on where he was. The third to last restart, Chastain gets to the line first because Kyle Larson didn't have pretty much went to the line, the second line, the restart zone. That's when the flagman starts it. So there was questions. Hey, he beat the leader to the line. NASCAR let that go. This is when we saw Truex get in the crash. Chastain got the lane choice, chose the inside lane. He goes hard. He said he was trying to squeeze Kyle Larson, but it backfired, and the two of them essentially pull what Truex and Logano did the restart before, crashing in front of the field. Byron, he gets around this. That paves the way for him to get the win. But again, we're talking about Chastain saying he didn't meant to wreck Kyle or, of course, himself. He just meant to squeeze him. And we heard Cliff Daniels on the radio, very critical, voicing his frustration to Chevrolet. It sounded like Kyle Larson called him a hack. We've heard that before from Kyle Busch towards Alex Bowman. Was this Ross being over aggressive, or was this just the nature of the hard racing and the challenges of going too wide into Darlington turn number 1?
Yeah, that hack word comes up a lot when we're talking about some of these Chevy drivers here in relation to Hendrick Motorsports. Denny Hamlin, I think, used it at Martinsville with Bowman as well. But yeah, I'm tempted to say that if this had just been an isolated incident, or if this had been two random drivers going for the win, I'd be tempted to say, that's just the nature of hard racing, trying to go side by side into a turn that, on a track, but it's very difficult to do that and come out cleanly. But, I don't know if it's just, it's wired in our heads right now. Ross Chastain seems to get caught up in something almost every week at this point. That the whole blame Ross meme, I know, is going to circulate on Twitter again this week, but I don't know. Just looking at it through those glasses, I feel like we know the kind of driver that Ross Chastain is at this point. I think that it's tough to be too hard on him because, you are going for the win. It is in the closing laps. It's not like this happened on the first lap of the race. Then I would definitely say you're being a little too overly aggressive. But I don't know. I probably need to see the replay again, to be honest, to get a better sense of my thoughts on this. But, at first glance, seeing it, it's hard not to look at Ross Chastain being in yet another late race scenario like this and ending up with a torn up race car and a competitor's torn up race car as well. I don't know. I just feel like if it happens so many times in a row, it can't be a coincidence at that point. So I think Ross Chastain, I'm not saying it's not a good thing to be aggressive. I think you have to be aggressive in this sport if you're going to be a championship contender and, be up front competing for wins. These stock cars have fenders for a reason. Drivers have been known to use them. But there is a line that can be crossed. And I think, this isn't the first time Ross is, in the minds of some fans at least, and certainly in the minds of Hendrick and Kyle Larson fans, crossed that line even just this year. So we'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah, it's hard racing for the win. Chastain has no wins. We saw Kyle Larson squeezing up at the restart before, but of course, once he got the lead from Larson on that restart, play payback, didn't exactly work out, and I have to agree with you. It just seems like Chastain is going to race everyone hard. But it just seems like we're always talking about him. Yes, some people are you're just picking on Ross because he was there. No, I don't see that. I think it is something where he might have to scale it back. I don't know if he will. I just keep thinking this is not going to, at his pace, I don't know when he'll get a win unless it'll be he wins because there's a long green flag run and nobody's behind him. I got an idea if somebody's right behind him within striking range, they might use their front bumper to move Chastain out of the win because they know there's not going to be a whole lot of drivers that are going to be feeling bad for Chastain. Now, one person that probably felt a little bit bad at the end of stage 2 was essentially the owner of Trackhouse Racing when they saw the 99 car was about to go a lap down at the last lap of the second stage. Ross Chastain's leading. Martin Truex Jr. is catching up. The two of them make contact. So again, Martin Truex Jr. goes for a spin. He didn't necessarily put all the blame on Chastain. But again, this was the case of Chastain. He didn't want to put Suarez a lap down. Now, Ben, this is the final lap of the second stage. We know if Suarez was to go a lap down, he'll get the free pass. Instead, getting the free pass, the beneficiary was the 41, Ryan Preece, a Ford driver. So it doesn't seem to make sense. Do you think, looking back, Trackhouse should have informed Suarez, hey, let Chastain by so that way he could get this stage win easier rather than seeing what occurred between him and Truex?
Joe, I can certainly get what you're saying here. And I think, on paper, again, that's something that does make sense. But me, I'm definitely not a fan of team orders in racing, certainly for stage wins. Nonetheless, although I guess Suarez would have been, they're coming to the end of a stage, not the end of the race. Let's just put it at that. I especially wouldn't be a fan of it for a stage result rather than even a race result. So I don't know. I think you just have to let the drivers take matters into their own hands and race how they're going to race and let the results be what they'll be. I would not want to set a precedent where we're having teams, instruct team orders to their drivers to position themselves for free passes, at the end of a stage. I think that's taking things a little too far. And this coming from somebody that's not a fan of team orders, generally speaking, in any circumstance, I wouldn't be a fan of seeing that. So it's unfortunate how it played out there, but I think Trackhouse ultimately in the long run did the right thing.
I think at the end, if they want the drivers to just race and race each other respectfully for the teammates, you don't step in with team orders. I think what Ross Chastain was saying, he didn't want to put him a lap down, I think really speaks how him, Suarez, have a good chemistry going. Same time, Justin Marks, I'm just curious, would he look in that scenario and think, okay, we could have done this better? Granted, they still won the stage. The car was still very fast. Same for Truex too. Was still pretty fast, but he wasn't up towards the front again for the lead until late in the stage when he got into crash as well. It'll be really interesting to see if Justin Mark steps in, makes any adjustments. But overall, I felt like this was just hard racing for a stage ending and just unfortunate circumstance, but left a lot of people talking about the race, in which today we saw Chevrolet, Toyota, they essentially dominated the race when it comes to laps led. Kevin Harvick, Ryan Blaney, they led 8 laps combined. That was mainly during green flag pit stops, so the Fords weren't really there when it came to racing for the lead. But still, we had several Fords in the top 10, including Kevin Harvick. Brad Keselowski, very fast car, very strong run all day long, just not enough for the win. Harrison Burton, almost all day in the top 15, and then just worked his way up, was in 5th place until Bubba Wallace got around him. Ryan Blaney, Chris Buescher, they were all in the top 10. So with the Southern 500 kicking off the playoffs, do you believe the Ford drivers should be concerned about a weak start of the playoffs in Darlington?
It's interesting because I feel like the Fords have some speed. They're up there in the top 10, like you mentioned, but I'm looking at the season results so far, and Joey Logano is the only Ford driver to win this year, getting that win at Atlanta. So I don't know. I suppose maybe that says Ford is a pretty distant third behind Chevy or Toyota Chevy, depending on which order you'd rank them. They seem to be pretty even at the moment, each having 2 wins in the last 4 races here. So I think that, Ford certainly have some time to turn things around. I mean, we're only halfway through the regular season here. So, in terms of drivers, outside the top section of points here, you certainly have to start thinking about winning a race to get into the postseason. But, at the same time, I think there is still certainly time to turn things around, and you'd rather have a little bit of a lack of performance relative to your other 2 competitors in the manufacturer standings at this point in the year, rather than when it's coming time to compete for a championship. So I think Ford have some time to turn some things around, but at the same time, they need to make sure that they do take that step forward before we get to the playoffs here.
I would have to say they have to take that step forward because, as you mentioned, Joey Logano, 1 win. What would have happened if he didn't get caught up in the crash with Truex? We'll never know. Big thing is, of course, they seem to have the speed. RFK Racing seems to be better too. I see they are making good progress. Once they get to the Southern 500, I think they should be in solid shape. But if they could find some additional speed, that'll make all the team owners and drivers in the Ford camp feel good about that. Now we'll go to Joshua's recap on the NASCAR race, and then when we come back, the grid ranking.
Like a bad penny, you just can't keep me away. Okay, I guess we're talking NASCAR now as well. Well, I was calling the race with Matthew Owens as well on USRN, and I thought it was an interesting race. I love Darlington, really do. First half of the race was really interesting. Caution coming out for fluid by Hamlin's number 11 on the track. Then we had Paul out of the race with the transaxle issue as well. Berry scrubbed the wall in the first stage as well. And then the second caution came out to end the stage. Truex winning that one as well. Absolutely fantastic. fantastic. Second stage, not much happened as well. Chastain hit the wall as well and collected Truex Jr. at the end of the race as well, and that brought out the caution. Also ended stage 2 with Ross Chastain winning the race, but really it was stage 3, as you all know, had got the biggest thing. Big ones, 2 big ones in that race as well. The 2, 38, 42, 99, 43, 51, 34 and 3 all getting instant on the back straight away when we went back to green as well for the the third stage. That put Dillon out, Suarez out and McDowell all going out of the race then as well. Fifth caution then came out lap 209 for the 47, spinning around with a flat rear right. So I've written down here, I can't read my own writing. Got back into the pit lane though. Then the 78 went out. And McLeod was out of the race, and I can't find out why. So if you guys know, tune in after this. Then it was cautions breed cautions towards the end of the race. Newman spins on lap 275, brings out the caution. Then on the restart as well, with 10 to go, we get the big one. The second one of the day, caution 7, the 19, the 45, the 22, the 4, the 9, the 6, the 10, all crashing at turn 1. That put Martin Truex Jr. out of the race. And it was Truex's fault as well. He was pushing up in the line as well, makes contact and puts himself out of the race. Completely his fault. And I hope there will be a penalty coming for him as well, because we were praising Martin Truex Jr. for doing such a good race. He led early so much, but a small mistake put him out of it as well. And then the final caution that put us into overtime as well. Ross Chastain hitting the side of Kyle Larson for the second time in 14 days as well. You really can't put a price on that, of course, because Larson was affected by Chastain taking pull out back at Dover 2 weeks ago on Monday. But that put us in overtime. It also put Ross Chastain out. But Chastain over the radio was saying as well on the previous restart, again, Larson was fighting with him as well. And over the radio, Chastain was saying, well, he's going to have to push us harder than that. He's going to have to fight us harder than that as well. And Chastain was already been in the walls today as well, so he had damage to the car. And then he said in the post-race interview, I was deliberately pushing him up, I was trying to push him, didn't expect to wreck us, but again, we all saw it coming, we all knew it was going to happen. I'm all for giving drivers the aggression when it's necessary, but you can't let it get over aggressive. You can't let him become like a spoilt driver. You've got to let him really sort of reel it in. I want a penalty for Ross Chastain. I want him to actually learn his actions has consequences. I think he should be benched for a race for irresponsible riding and irresponsible conduct now. In the past 4 weeks, he's caused so much drama across NASCAR. Yeah, it's great for TVing, but it's not great for the image of the sport. He's causing problems. He needs to be put in his place as well. No sport is bigger than one single driver. At the end of the race, though, got one overtime sorted, didn't have to go much, only 2 laps over, so that's okay, we can live with that, to get a good end. And it was Byron taking a win here in Darlington. I thought it was a great race, really, really fun, loving that I'm doing more NASCAR now, and I hope, guys, you've had a great show and a great evening. I'll be back on the Encore tomorrow to talk Moto2 and Moto3 from Le Mans, and of course I'll be back every day on the Grid Network next week, actually, as we're doing the special shows as well for the Indy 500. So technically, you're not going to get rid of me for about 9 days on the Grid Network. You have to live with it. See you later, guys.
We'll see Joshua for a full busy day, but Ben, he's saying Ross Chastain should be parked. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a bold take. I can understand where Josh is coming from, because, Josh is in the UK, and, the European series are typically a lot more strict when it comes to avoidable contact than NASCAR is. I don't expect anything that severe to be coming Ross Chastain's way in the immediate future. But, from coming from Josh's perspective, I could honestly maybe start to see where he's, thinking that the wheels are turning in his head, that's where he's going. I like I said, don't think that he's going to go, that NASCAR would go that far at this point. Certainly a bold take on Josh's part. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it, Joe. But, I guess that tells you what Josh thinks about how the aggression's gotten out of hand with Ross Chastain here. This, like I said, if this were an isolated incident, I don't think we're having this conversation. But once it continues to boil over as much as it has, and we start talking about this every week like it feels like we have this season, maybe it's time to have maybe not a parked or a benching conversation or a race suspension conversation, but certainly a conversation about what NASCAR needs to do to maybe start reeling this in a little bit.
I would say in the past, we would have seen NASCAR sort of have that conversation with a driver that, hey, you and another driver, like for example, Bodine, Earnhardt back then, you two are racing each other too hard. Guys got to settle it down, take care of your business. In the past, we would have seen veteran drivers. I seem to be talking about this lately because of Ross Chastain. When Ernie Irvin was brand new in the Morgan McClure Chevrolet, spinning people, getting in trouble. Finally, it seemed to be when Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, he went into the garage. I got a race bet. I'm sorry, guys. It seemed that was always in place. But now in this era of NASCAR, that doesn't seem to be in place. I feel NASCAR, they're sort of a lot more hands off, compared to where they were in the past. The drivers, I mean, they're all racing each other hard. Ross Chastain didn't do anything too egregious. He did the same thing essentially Truex did. If there was any other driver besides Ross Chastain, I don't think we'd be talking about. We'd be talking about how they ruined their good day, they ruined Kyle Larson's day, but wouldn't be talking about the driver being over aggressive because this was essentially coming down towards a win, and we know the clean air really matters. Overall, I don't see NASCAR going to be parking Ross Chastain anytime soon. If anything, what are we going to be seeing? Just like the last week, everyone's going to be talking about Chastain this week. It seems Chastain where it's the Hail Melon, the over-aggression, the wins, the fight now with Noah Gragson. People are talking about NASCAR. That's something NASCAR, right now, I would say they're enjoying it. When will it cross the line? Will that be when Ross Chastain gets in another fight? Will it be when there's a major accident caused by Ross Chastain? Because right now we know everyone walked away, but we know there's still a lot of safety concerns with this car too, and it's just slowly building up to where I would hate to see somebody get hurt, but it's that when NASCAR is going to step in. I think this is really going to be interesting to see what happens.
Well, I'm glad you brought all that up, Joe, because I think this is a very important factor to remember here, and I've seen a lot of people say this on social media as well. You can love Ross Chastain, you can hate Ross Chastain, you cannot deny his presence has been good for NASCAR publicity over the last several months in particular, going all the way back to what he did at Martinsville with the Hail Melon that was seen 100 million times on social media, literally 100 million impressions. I think that thing got to all the different times we've been talking about him. I mean, he's given us something to talk about at the very least, and it's left fans with plenty of conversations to have, and they're certainly divided on the issue. Again, I think it probably would be a bad look for NASCAR to park him tomorrow or later this week based on this one incident here, because I don't think this was nearly egregious enough to warrant that. I think if NASCAR were to go down that road, it would have to be something very blatant and very, a situation where you can't argue what Ross's intentions were. Ross could, try to shrug it off all he wanted. That would be what it would take. And then you can maybe point to all the previous incidents that he's had or been involved in or instigated and, maybe use that as rationale for, giving him a 1 race or 2 race ban or whatever. So again, I think a pretty bold take to say the least from Josh there, although I can understand where he's coming from a European mindset. But at the same time, I think, it wouldn't be necessarily a bad idea for NASCAR to maybe sit down and have a conversation about how we police this going forward.
Now, one thing I just started thinking about, we heard Cliff Daniels bring up Chevrolet in the radio. If NASCAR doesn't have that conversation, could Chevrolet, the manufacturer, say, hey, we want you all on the table, we want to discuss, because we don't want a Chevrolet causing another Chevrolet to crash out or worse, take each other out, and neither one win the race. If Byron didn't get around him, it could have been Harvick in a Ford or another Ford again that win. Do you think Chevrolet could maybe have a role?
I'm sure Chevy's not going to be happy, and GM certainly aren't going to be happy with, 2 of their teams not working together and taking each other out. But, again, Joe, I'll go back to something that, after the Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson incident last year at Vegas, I put together this compilation to try to prove to people that Kyle Petty's supposedly hot take about him needing to be suspended for the rest of the year wasn't all that hot at all, because it was consistent with what Kyle had said in previous instances of intentional wrecks over the years. And there was one clip I included where I got a couple of comments saying, thank you for throwing this in there, because this is the most important part of your entire compilation. It's the second most viewed video in my YouTube channel's history. A lot of people really seemed to like this one thing that Kyle said. He mentioned, when are owners going to control their own house and step in and rein their drivers in and make this a priority for them to take care of? Because this is not NASCAR's problem all the time. When you have situations like this, the owners need to be the ones that step in and say, we need to have a conversation with our driver because this has gone over the line. This has gotten out of hand. Now, it's up to Justin Marks ultimately in Trackhouse and that management team over there to decide what point does this need to get to before we had that conversation with Ross Chastain, because I think Ross Chastain and Justin Marks seem to have a very good working relationship. That team has been firing on all cylinders and has grown at a faster pace than I think any of us have expected. But at what point would Trackhouse go to Ross and say, maybe we should try dialing back the aggression a little bit, because this is how many race cars that we've torn up or how many times that we've been involved in a controversy like this. Maybe we should take a step back and try to avoid this in the future. So again, that's up to Trackhouse to decide, I think, just as much as it is NASCAR. When do we step in and have this conversation here?
Trackhouse definitely has a role in it. It's going to be very interesting. And now we have North Wilkesboro, a short track, short tempers, all-star race. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
And it's an exhibition. There's no points on the line. So I think drivers are going to be more willing to take those risks.
More willing to take those risks, and maybe more willing to, if Chastain's near them, sort of remind them, hey, I'm not a big fan of you. So it's going to be really interesting. And of course, we're going to be previewing that all weekend next weekend with Grid Life pre-race. And of course, the All-Star race is not part of the grid ranking since it's a non-points event. Only 2 points event next weekend for the grid ranking. So Kobe is here to discuss the grid ranking and the new grid ranking stand-ins.
Yeah, we have some movement in the grid ranking top 10 for week 7. The top 3 positions remain unchanged, but since Sebastian Ogier didn't race this weekend's running part-time schedule, his score drop allowed Shane Van Gisbergen to advance. After victory in Portugal, Kalle Rovanperä is in the top 10, and Brock Feeney fell all the way down to top. Marco Bezzecchi was also in the top 10 after his win, and Alex Palou, Pato O'Ward moves up 2 positions, and Marcus Ericsson falls out of the top 10. Looking at the entire grid ranking, William Byron went up from 21st to 11th with that win. Ericsson fell to 14th after a quiet weekend, and Scott McLaughlin is the lowest he has ever been in the grid ranking. And next weekend, we'll only have Formula One, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, and then the Repco Supercars Championship. I believe they'll be racing in Tasmania, Tassie, they like to call it, and those will be the only 2 series that will be scored. Joe, what will you be watching for in the Formula One and Supercars races regarding the grid ranking?
Formula One, Max Verstappen controls everything when it comes to grid ranking. If he could get the win or a second place finish, he's going to be on the top of the grid ranking standings for another race weekend. Sergio Perez, he would love to stay in the top 10, of course. The big thing is he has to get a win, second place as well. Third place, I think he'll still be in there. But overall, Sergio Perez, his big focus, of course, try to run at max pace, stay up there, get a good finish. Over in the supercar side, I think you're going to see Brody Kostecki, Shane Van Gisbergen. Those are going to be the 2 fastest at Tasmania. Super sprints there. It's going to be quite a lot of racing. If they were to have a bad race each, they'll still be, I think, in the top 10 easily because they're still quite a ways ahead of everyone. The big thing, though, is Brock Feeney. He has gotten a couple wins already, so I think overall he will love to try to get back in the top 10 of the grid ranking. And overall, grid ranking, what a season this year has been so far. Max Verstappen leading it continuously, but we're seeing a lot of shakeup throughout the year, and especially since NASCAR has not been that consistent. A lot going on. Of course, follow it on Grid Ranking at Twitter and our website, gridranking.com.
Oh, it's me. My apologies. Let's go into the one shining moment here. The one thing that stood out to us over this weekend. Joe, we'll start with you. What is your grid one shining moment from this weekend in motorsports?
Oh, I have 2, but I think I'll go with MotoGP, the 278,000 plus audience there, record number. Overall, this race weekend, good turnout, including Saturday in the sprint race. I know a lot of people were talking about, will the sprint race really bring that much more fans out? Well, it did here in France, site of the 1000th Grand Prix. MotoGP, I would say that is my one shining moment for having such a huge turnout.
And I have to give my one shining moment to the driver to number 21, Wood Brothers Racing Ford Mustang, Harrison Burton. Harrison admits, it's been no secret. He's had some real growing pains and some struggles as he continues to come to grips with the NASCAR Cup Series. And for Harrison Burton to get a top 10, considering everything he's been through and where he is right now in the point standings, this has to feel like a major win for him, a huge step forward, and a big confidence booster that he can say, I can compete with these NASCAR Cup Series drivers. And when you're driving for the Wood Brothers, one of the most historical teams in NASCAR history, there's going to be a lot of pressure for you to perform, especially when you have a technical alliance with Team Penske. Harrison's been really struggling in his couple of years running full-time in the Cup Series, and for him to get a top 10, this comes at a really, really good time for him.
Well, I think I mentioned it during a comment that came up in the chat earlier, Michelle, but I want to give a shout out to RCR's social media team trolling NASCAR Twitter with the greatest throwback reveal I've ever seen. Of course, if you missed that, if you don't know the context, it wasn't really a throwback. They just ran the exact same scheme that Kyle won with at Fontana earlier this year, and only his second points-paying start with RCR. And so RCR not having a throwback on the 8 car this year, they joked that it was a throwback to Kyle's first win with the team, even though that was just a few months ago. But I thought it was very funny. I thought it was great for RCR to have some fun on social media. And I've got to say, maybe an anti-shining moment for some of the fans that got so uptight over that. I think, a lot of times social media can be very draining, and it's fun to just have some fun here. And I think that was better than the teams that didn't run any throwback at all and didn't even acknowledge the weekend. At least RCR had some fun with it, despite not running a true throwback scheme, as it were. So shout out to whoever at RCR put that idea together and thought of that. That's my one shining moment. Great to see some teams having fun with the admins on the social media accounts. And Adam Lemery says, good to see Ryan Newman and Carl Edwards back behind the driver's seat and in the broadcast booth, respectively. Two great drivers, drivers that we haven't seen in several years now. Great to see them back at the track this weekend. And I know Carl I believe Newman was on the 75 greatest drivers list as well. So
yes,
great for them both to be back at the track this weekend, as they were both honored with that list finally being put together this weekend as well.
Yeah, great to see the full 75 list, and then all the drivers there. 30 of them were able to make it to Darlington today for all the ceremonies and everything. Now, speaking about fun, especially on social media, pick a winner. That is still going, and Alex from Twitter has taken the lead, but Kobe and Ed are tied for second place of 14th right there. So overall, it is still catching a lot of good competition all across motorsports, and really the top 10 all really close there. We got 3 supercar races next week, Formula 1, 4 total. So it's still anybody's game, never too late for pick a winner.
Guess we just need one good weekend, and I'll be right up there level with you guys up at the front. So we'll see if we can do that. Plenty of racing in the month of May to get me there, so we'll see what happens.
Plenty of race in the month of May, and I think it's going to be a very exciting month of May. Of course, Ben will be on the air tomorrow for Grid Encore. Joshua Burch is going to be there to recap Moto 2, Moto 3, NASCAR, ARCA, and Indy Next, as well as all the open wheel racing that went on at Indianapolis. Then Kobe, Tuesday through Friday, special grid tonight, coverage of the practice sessions at Indianapolis. And then moving to motorsports on Friday as well. And we'll do this all over again next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, with Grid Live. Calling the show, Mark, Robin, David, they all keep us on the air. They invest money into us each and every month. You could do that as well. You get a thank you card from us. We'll read your name on each show. And, of course, buy me a coffee as well. Buy me a coffee. You can help in particular on-air personality by giving them coffee. So you'll go on the link below, buy them a cup of coffee. They get the funds directly. Very exciting. And, of course, gridranking.com will post articles each and every week. And right here on YouTube, hit the bell icon, subscribe, and be sure to like, share with your friends that enjoy motorsports content, because one of the big things, we do this because we all love motorsports. This is a lot of fun for all of us here at the Grid Network. So we're just about out of time. So unfortunately, Iron Kong had just joined us. Did I miss the IndyCar talk? Yes, you did, but definitely we encourage you to hit the rewind button. I think we had a very fun show overall with IndyCar, NASCAR, IMSA, Grid Ranking, and Endurance Performance Index. And the beautiful part of YouTube, you could just hit the play button again and start from the beginning. For Ben Schneider, Kobe Lambs from the Podium Finish, I'm Joe Sanriego. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.